2,500 years after the events had happened, 3 investigators looking into who wrote the Bible, each independently, made the same discovery. One was a minister, one was a physician, and one was a professor. Sounds like the beginning to a good joke, but what they found was dead serious. The discovery that they all made ultimately came down to the combination of 2 pieces of evidence. Something called doublets and the various names of God. They saw that there were apparently 2 versions each of a large number of the biblical Moses stories. There were 2 accounts of the creation, 2 accounts of each of several stories about the patriarchs Abraham and Jacob, and so on. Then they noticed that one of the 2 versions of a story would refer to God by one name and the other version would refer to God by a different name. The 2 stories have 2 different pictures of what happened in the beginning. Now, the 3 investigators noticed that the first version of the creation story always refers to the Creator as God, 35 times. The second version always refers to him by his name, Yahweh, 11 times. The first version never calls him Yahweh, the second version never calls him God or El. The investigators saw that they were not simply dealing with a book that repeated itself a great deal, and they were not dealing with a loose collection of somewhat similar stories. They had discovered 2 separate works that someone had cut up and combined into one. In the case of the creation story, the first chapter of the Bible tells one version of how the world came to be created, and the second chapter of the Bible starts over with a different version of what happened. In many ways they duplicate each other, and on several points, they contradict each other. Basically, they describe the same events in different order. The idea that the Bible's early history was a combination of 2 originally separate works by 2 different people lasted only 18 years. Because practically before anyone had a chance to consider the implications of this idea for the Bible and religion, investigators discovered that the first 5 books of the Bible were not, in fact, even by 2 writers, they were, by 4. This is when the documentary hypothesis was suggested. It holds that the first 5 books of the Old Testament were originally independent accounts that were later edited or redacted by a later editor or editors. Those who support the documentary hypothesis theory generally suggest 4 specific sources represented by the letters J, E, D and P. Because of this, the documentary hypothesis is often also referred to as the JEDP theory. The J source refers to an alleged Yahwist source that was written in the Kingdom of Judah by approximately 950 BC. The E source refers to an alleged Elohistic source that was written in the Kingdom of Israel, Northern Kingdom, by approximately 850 BC. The D source refers to an alleged Deuteronomist source that was written in Jerusalem by approximately 600 BC. The P source refers to an alleged priestly source that was completed in Babylon by Jewish priests in approximately 500 BC. These allegations completely contrast the biblical claim that the first 5 books were authorized by Moses by approximately 1400 BC. For the documentary hypothesis to be true, Moses could not have authored the books, nor could they have been completed anywhere near the time period spoken of in the books themselves. The first 2 sources, called the J and D, were written by 2 persons who lived during a time of 2 separate kingdoms. They were tied to the life of that period, its major events, its politics, its religion, and its catastrophes. First, the author of J came from Judah and the author of E came from Israel. The mere fact that different stories in the first books of the Bible call God by different names of course proves nothing. There was just something more suspicious about the way the different names of the deity lined up in the first few books of the Bible. The 2 different names, Yahweh and Elohim, seemed to line up consistently in each of the 2 versions of the same stories in the doublets. If we separate the Elohim, E, stories from the Yahweh, J, stories, we get a consistent series of clues that the E stories were written by someone concerned with Israel and the J stories by someone concerned with Judah. The land of Israel was still full of original Canaanites. The Jews of Judah had their God Yahweh. For the Canaanites and the ancient Levantine region as a whole, El was the supreme God, the father of mankind and all creatures. As recorded on the clay tablets of Ugarit, El is the husband of the goddess Asherah. It seems almost certain that the God of the Jews evolved gradually from the Canaanite El, who was in all likelihood the God of Abraham. The name Israel seems to suggest a God other than Yahweh. Jesus was from the northern kingdom of Israel